The annual Miller family gathering at La Maison d'Aja was in full swing, with my sister Victoria orchestrating every detail like the social director she fancied herself to be. I watched from near the kitchen as she arranged everyone according to her mental hierarchy of success. "James, darling, you're next to mother, of course, Theo's privileges," she chirped, guiding our investment banker brother to the prime spot. "And Charlotte, here by father. We must celebrate that partnership at Goldman." I remained in the shadows, knowing what was coming. It happened every year. Victoria finally noticed me, her designer glasses sliding down her nose as she frowned. "Oh, Emma, there you are. We're a bit tight at the main tables. Perhaps you could sit." She gestured vaguely toward the service area. "Over there? With your, what is it you do again?" "Personal shopping." If she only knew. Personal shopping was my cover. A convenient explanation for my frequent travel and flexible schedule. It kept my family from asking too many questions about how I really spent my time. Running HDG International, a luxury hospitality empire worth $12 billion. "Of course, Victoria," I said quietly, moving toward the staff area. My sophisticated black dress, a one-of-a-kind piece from a designer I actually owned, looked out of place among the servers' uniforms, but Victoria was too busy fawning over James's latest promotion to notice. I settled at a small table near the kitchen, watching the restaurant's staff move with practiced efficiency. None of them knew that the woman seated among them owned not just this restaurant, but the entire chain of La Maison establishments across 3 continents. "Miss Harrison." Marcel, the restaurant manager, hurried over looking panicked. He was new, transferred from our Paris location last month, and hadn't yet learned about my preference for anonymity during family events. "Your private table is ready, we didn't realize you would be." "It's fine, Marcel," I cut him off softly. "Tonight I'm just Emma, having dinner with family. Please ensure everyone maintains that discretion." He nodded, though his eyes kept darting anxiously between me and the opulent main table where Victoria was now regaling everyone with stories about her latest charity gala. The same gala that had been held at one of my hotels, though she had no idea. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah, my CFO. "Acquisition of Rivera Hotels complete. You now own every major luxury property in 3 more cities. Board meeting tomorrow to discuss expansion plans." I smiled, thinking of Victoria's frequent boasts about staying at Rivera properties. Wait until she discovered her connections at those hotels were actually employees of her little sister. "Emma." Mother's voice carried across the restaurant. "At least come say hello to everyone. We hardly see you these days with your little business keeping you so busy." My little business had just closed a $3 billion deal, but I dutifully rose and approached the family table. James barely glanced up from his phone, probably checking stock prices, including, though he didn't know it, HDG International's soaring shares. "Still doing that personal shopping thing?" he asked dismissively. "You know, there's an entry-level position opening in my department." I bit back a laugh, remembering that his investment bank had tried to arrange financing for my latest acquisition. I'd rejected their terms, too aggressive, too arrogant. Just like James. The restaurant's owner, Philippe Bernard, chose that moment to make his entrance. He stopped dead when he saw me, his face paling slightly. "Madame Harrison," he exclaimed before catching himself. "I mean, Mademoiselle." Victoria's head snapped up. "You know Emma?" Philippe looked desperately between me and my family, realizing his mistake. I could save him from the awkwardness, but perhaps it was time for a small lesson in assumptions. Philippe's panicked expression was almost comical as he struggled to recover. That is, Madame Harrison is. Emma shops for some of his regular customers." Victoria cut in smoothly, already crafting a narrative that fit her worldview. "Isn't that right, Emma?" Before I could respond, the restaurant's doors opened again. This time it was Marcus Chin, my chief operations officer, who clearly hadn't gotten the memo about my family gatherings. He strode in confidently, tablet in hand. "Boss, sorry to interrupt your dinner, but we need your signature on the Rivera Hotels merger before the Asian markets open," and he stopped abruptly, taking in the scene. My family's confused faces, Philippe's visible distress, and my carefully neutral expression. "Boss," James echoed, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. Mother's social radar was pinging wildly now. She'd spent decades cultivating relationships with New York's elite, and something wasn't adding up about her supposedly unsuccessful daughter. I could feel the carefully constructed wall between my real life and my family facade beginning to crumble. Perhaps it was time. After all, the Rivera acquisition would be public knowledge by morning. "Thank you, Marcus," I said calmly, taking the tablet. "The paperwork for all 37 properties?" 38, he corrected. "We included the Singapore location in the final deal. Once you sign, HDG International will officially be the largest luxury hospitality group in Asia." Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers, red liquid spreading across the pristine white tablecloth. No one moved to clean it up. The staff were too busy watching their boss's identity being revealed to her own family. HDG International? Father spoke for the first time, his business instincts awakening. The company that just acquired Rivera Hotels for $3 billion? That HDG International. "The same," I confirmed, signing the digital documents with a flourish. "Though that's just the latest acquisition. You might also know us from the Lou Maison chain, the Wellington Hotel Group, or perhaps the Grand Plaza Properties." "James certainly does. His bank tried to finance this deal." James's face went from confused to shocked to pale as the implications hit him. "That was your company? But the CEO of HDG's is standing right here," I finished, handing the tablet back to Marcus. "Philippe, I believe there's been a mistake with the seating arrangements. My usual table, please." Philippe practically tripped over himself, gesturing to the best table in the house. "The one I usually used for board meetings." "Of course, Madam Harrison. Right away." Victoria found her voice, though it had risen an octave. But you're a personal shopper. You drive a Honda. You live in a tiny apartment." "I own the building actually," I corrected. "Along with most of that block. The Honda is for when I don't want to draw attention. The town car and driver are outside if you'd prefer to see those." Mother's social calculator was working overtime now, realizing that her unsuccessful daughter actually owned every high-end hotel and restaurant she'd bragged about frequenting. "All those times you couldn't attend family functions because of work," she began. "I was usually in Dubai or Paris or Tokyo, overseeing my company's expansion." I smiled slightly. "Though I did attend James's promotion celebration last year. I own the venue after all." The staff had begun clearing Victoria's spilled wine, moving with the practiced efficiency of people who knew exactly who signed their paychecks. Marcus stood quietly to the side, clearly enjoying the show. "Shall we move to my table?" I suggested. "We can discuss the Rivera acquisition over dinner. James, I'm sure you'd love to hear why I rejected your bank's financing terms." The migration to my private table felt like a changing of the guard. Victoria, who had spent the evening playing social conductor, now trailed behind uncertainly. James, for once, had put his phone away, his expression caught between professional interest and personal shock. "The 82 Bordeaux, Philippe," I said as we settled in. "And inform the chef I'd like tonight's special presentation." "The one we've been aging for 3 months, madam?" Philippe asked, shooting a nervous glance at my family. "The experimental fusion menu?" "Exactly. It's time my family experienced what their personal shopper has been working on." Mother adjusted her pearls, a nervous habit from her country club days. "Working on? You mean you're involved in the menu planning as well?" Marcus, who had taken a seat at my right hand despite Victoria's obvious dismay, couldn't contain his laugh. "Madam Miller, your daughter personally approves every major menu change across all HDG properties. The molecular gastronomy program at Lou Maison was her idea. But you can barely cook." Victoria blurted out. "Last Christmas you brought store-bought cookies to the family dinner." "Because I was in the middle of acquiring those stores," I replied dryly. "The entire gourmet market chain, actually. Though the cookies were excellent, our food science team spent 6 months perfecting the recipe." The wine arrived and Philippe performed the tasting ceremony with extra flourish. I could see my siblings calculating the bottle's value, probably remembering all the times they'd mocked my budget lifestyle. "Now," I said, turning to James, "about that financing proposal. Your bank's terms were quite aggressive. Almost as aggressive as that job offer you made me last month." James choked on his wine. "That entry-level position. would have had me working 3 levels below people who currently report to my subsidiaries. I smiled, though I appreciated the irony. Father cleared his throat. When did all this happen? HDG International is one of the most secretive companies in the industry. The CEO has never been publicly named. By design, I confirmed. I started small, buying struggling boutique hotels and turning them around. While Victoria was planning charity galas at my properties and James was bragging about his banking connections, I was quietly building an empire. The first course arrived, a stunning display of culinary artistry that had taken our chef team months to perfect. Mother stared at her plate as if it might explain how her supposedly underachieving daughter had become a billionaire without her knowing. The Singapore property James mentioned earlier? I continued, enjoying their rapt attention. I bought it because Victoria kept bragging about staying there during her exclusive Asian vacations. She never noticed that her room upgrades and special treatment came from her sister, not her social connections. Victoria's face flushed. All those times you asked about my trips. Market research, I confirmed. Though your complaints about the Singapore location's spa services were quite helpful. We're renovating it next month. Marcus's tablet chimed with another update. Asian markets are opening, boss. Rivera Hotel stock is already responding to the acquisition news. James instinctively reached for his phone, then stopped himself. You beat out every major hotel group for Rivera. The financial press has been speculating for weeks about the mysterious buyer. They'll know soon enough. The press release goes out at midnight. I checked my watch. Which reminds me, Mother, you might want to cancel your lunch reservation at the plaza tomorrow. We're closing it for renovations now that we own it. Mother's fork clattered against her plate. The plaza? But I've been going there for 20 years. I know the owner personally. No, I corrected gently. You knew the previous owner. I'm the current one as of approximately 10 minutes ago when I signed those papers. The second course arrived, each plate a masterpiece of contemporary cuisine. My family watched in silence as the staff moved with choreographed precision, their respect for their true boss evident in every gesture. I have a car waiting, I said, checking my phone. The Rivera acquisition announcement is being made from our Tokyo office and I need to be there. James, your bank's analysis of the deal was actually quite good. Just not good enough. Victoria, next time you plan a charity gala, have your people call my people. The family discount will be substantial. As if on cue, my Tesla Model S pulled up outside, its sleek black form visible through Le Maison's floor-to-ceiling windows. Not the Honda Civic they were used to seeing me in. The driver, David, stepped out in his immaculate uniform, a far cry from the Uber drivers I'd claimed to rely on all these years. One last thing, I said, standing and smoothing my designer dress. Victoria, about those charity galas you're so proud of organizing. She looked up warily, no doubt wondering what other revelations were coming. The Children's Hospital Foundation you've been trying to get funding from? I'm the anonymous donor who's been supporting their oncology wing for the past 5 years. The next time you want to make a difference, try leading with compassion instead of connections. Mother's social mask finally cracked completely. The oncology wing? But that's millions. 200 million actually, Marcus supplied helpfully. Though boss usually prefers we don't discuss her charitable giving. James was frantically scrolling through his phone, no doubt reading the breaking news about HDG International's latest acquisition. The market's already reacting to the Rivera deal. This is going to be bigger than anyone predicted. Which reminds me, I turned to Father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. That business advice you gave me 5 years ago about starting small and learning the basics? I took it. I started with one struggling boutique hotel. Then I bought its competitors. Then the restaurant chain that served them. Then the supply companies, the booking platforms, the real estate. I let that sink in as Philippe appeared with a sleek leather portfolio. The complete wine list and seasonal menu planning documents that only the owner would normally see. Your upcoming renovations look magnificent, Madam Harrison, he said, pointedly using my business name. Especially the new rooftop garden concept. Victoria's eyes widened. But I just booked my engagement party here. The rooftop venue will be closed for renovations, I confirmed. But the Paris location has a lovely space. I'll have my team transfer your booking, complimentary upgrade, of course. Family discount. The irony of offering my sister a family discount at my own restaurant wasn't lost on anyone. She had spent years offering me her connections and favors, never realizing I was the one with the real power to help. My phone buzzed again. Tokyo waiting for their seat. I have to go. The Asian markets wait for no one, not even family revelations. I reached into my purse and placed a black credit card on the table. Dinner's on me. As usual, though you never knew it. All those business dinners, Mother said suddenly. When you couldn't attend because you were working late at your little shopping job. I was usually in this same restaurant at that private table over there. I gestured to a secluded corner. Closing deals worth more than this building. The shopping story just made it easier to avoid uncomfortable questions. David opened the restaurant door, standing at attention. Through the windows I could see several paparazzi already gathering. News of the Rivera acquisition was spreading fast. One last thing, I said, pausing at the table. James, that entry-level position you offered? I'm actually hiring for several executive roles after the Rivera merger. Your bank's analysis of the deal was impressive, even if your financing terms weren't. Have your people call my people, if you can handle reporting to your little sister. The look on his face was priceless. Equal parts shocked, impressed, and mortified. Victoria was still staring at the black credit card like it might disappear. Mother appeared to be mentally recalculating every social interaction we'd ever had. Oh, and Victoria? I added, those store-bought cookies at Christmas? They're going to be in every high-end market by next month. I bought the recipe for 8 figures. Sometimes the simplest things are worth the most, a lesson this family never quite understood. With that, I walked out of Le Maison d'Aja, leaving my family to digest more than just their dinner. Tomorrow, the business world would be buzzing about HDG International's latest conquest. But tonight, I had finally conquered something far more challenging. My family's assumptions about success. David held the car door open. Tokyo, Madam Harrison? Tokyo, I confirmed, sliding into the leather interior. And David? Make sure my family gets home safely in the backup car. After all, that's what successful people do. They take care of their own, even when their own didn't take care of them.
The cafe was packed when Sarah walked in, her left hand prominently displayed so everyone could see the ring. My grandmother's ring. She slid into the seat across from me, a smirk playing on her perfectly painted lips. Thanks for meeting me, Emma, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I wanted you to be the first to know. Michael and I are getting married. My stomach churned at the mention of my ex-husband's name, but I kept my expression neutral. Sarah had always been like this, taking everything that was mine, from childhood toys to prom dates. But this time she'd gone too far. Congratulations, I said, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup to stop them from shaking. I see you're wearing Grandmother Rose's ring. She held up her hand, letting the antique diamond catch the light. Oh, this old thing. Well, since Michael helped me contest the will, technically it's mine now, along with the house and the trust fund. Her smile widened. It's funny how things work out, isn't it? I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Grandmother Rose, just days before she passed. We'd been in her study, surrounded by her beloved books and antiques, when she'd handed me an old leather journal. Keep this safe, she'd whispered, her voice weak but urgent. Everything you need to know is in here. Promise me to wait until the right moment. I promised, tucking the journal away without reading it. Now, watching Sarah flaunt her stolen inheritance, I wondered if this was the moment Grandmother had been waiting for. You know what's really funny? Sarah continued, stirring her latte with obvious pleasure. How easy it was to convince the lawyers that you were mentally unstable. A few tearful statements from Michael about your episodes during your marriage, some carefully edited photos. She shrugged. The judge practically handed everything over. My hands tightened around my cup. The episodes Sarah mentioned were panic attacks I had after discovering Michael's affairs, including, I now realized, with my own sister. They'd used my lowest moments against me, twisted my pain into a weapon. Why did you ask me here, Sarah? I kept my voice steady, remembering the weight of Grandmother's journal in my bag. Just to gloat. Oh no, dear sister. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. I wanted to offer you a deal. Sign away any future claims to the estate, and I'll give you a small monthly allowance. just enough to keep you from ending up on the streets. She sat back, clearly pleased with herself. After all, we are family. I thought about the journal, about grandmother's final words, about the secret I discovered last night when I finally opened those weather pages. You're right, I said, reaching for my bag. We are family. And there's something you should know about grandmother's real estate. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? We've been through all the paperwork. Everything's in my name now. I pulled out the journal, its leather cover worn with age. Not everything. Did you know grandmother kept a second set of books? For the first time, Sarah's confident smile faltered. What? She was quite meticulous, I continued, opening the journal. Every transaction, every property, every investment, all documented here, including some interesting transfers made just before she died. You're lying, Sarah snapped, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The lawyers found everything. Did they? I slid a stack of papers across the table, copies I'd made from the journal's most important pages. Because according to this, grandmother's most valuable assets were moved into a separate trust 2 weeks before she passed. A trust that requires both sisters to agree on any distribution of funds. Sarah's face paled as she scanned the documents. I could almost see her mind racing, calculating what this meant. That's impossible, she whispered, but her hands were shaking now. Michael checked everything, he said. Michael doesn't know about this, I cut in. Neither do the lawyers. Grandmother made sure of that. She knew how you both operated. She was just waiting to see how far you'd go. You're bluffing, Sarah said, but her voice had lost its edge. These could be forged. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized. Why don't we ask Mr. Chen? He's the trustee grandmother appointed. I'm sure he'd be happy to verify everything. Sarah's composure cracked completely. Wait, she said quickly, reaching for my phone. Let's discuss this. I ended the call before it connected, enjoying the flash of realization in her eyes. Oh, now you want to talk? What happened to all that confidence from earlier? Emma, please, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You don't understand. Michael and we've already spent some of the money. We've made commitments. I understand perfectly, I replied, gathering my things. You and my ex-husband conspired to steal my inheritance by painting me as mentally unstable. You used my trust against me just like you always have. What do you want? Sarah asked, the question coming out more like a plea than a demand. I stood up, looking down at my sister, really looking at her for the first time in years. Behind the perfect makeup and designer clothes, I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. What I want, I said quietly, is for you to think about what's going to happen when Michael finds out there's no money left to steal. When he realizes that marrying you won't give him access to grandmother's fortune after all. The color drained from Sarah's face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I smiled, remembering all the times she'd taken what was mine, all the times she'd hurt me without consequence. I think it's time for both of you to learn what it feels like to lose everything. I turned to leave, but Sarah's voice stopped me. He'll leave me, she said, her words barely audible. If he finds out about this, he'll leave me. Probably, I agreed, not turning around. Just like he left me when he thought something better came along. Funny how history repeats itself, isn't it? As I walked out of the cafe, I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, could almost hear her mind racing to find a way out of the trap she'd set for herself. But this time, there was no escape. This time, justice would finally be served. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and dozens of text messages from both Sarah and Michael. I ignored them all, instead focusing on the next phase of my plan. Grandmother's journal had revealed more than just the secret trust. It had shown me exactly how to dismantle the lies they'd built. I drove to the law offices of Chen and Associates, the leather journal secure in my bag. Mr. Chen, a small man with kind eyes and steel gray hair, was waiting for me. Miss Emma, he said, rising from behind his desk. Your grandmother spoke of you often. She would be proud to see you now. I placed the journal on his desk. Did she tell you what they might try to do? He nodded gravely. Rose was very perceptive. She knew your sister's nature, and she had concerns about your ex-husband's intentions even before your divorce. That's why she created the second trust? Precisely. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Everything of real value, the investment portfolios, the commercial properties, the art collection, It's all here, protected. What your sister and Michael managed to steal through the courts was essentially a shell. I thought about Sarah's smug face at the cafe, about Michael's confident testimony painting me as unstable. They don't know they've been playing with an empty hand this whole time. No, Mr. Chen confirmed, a slight smile touching his lips. And now that they've shown their true colors, we can proceed with the rest of Rose's plan. My phone buzzed again. Michael this time. I silenced it without looking at the message. How long before they figure it out? The quarterly statements go out next week. Once they try to access the accounts. Mr. Chen spread his hands. Well, let's just say it will be an enlightening experience. I spent the next few days in careful preparation. While Sarah and Michael grew increasingly desperate in their attempts to contact me, I met with bankers, real estate agents, and investment advisors. Each meeting revealed another layer of grandmother's brilliance. She hadn't just protected her assets, she created a framework for exposing every lie, every manipulation Sarah and Michael had used against me. The evidence was all there, meticulously documented. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emma, it was Michael's mother, Margaret. Please, we need to talk. Sarah's hysterical and Michael won't tell me what's going on. I closed my eyes, remembering how Margaret had testified against me during the estate hearing, claiming she'd always known there was something wrong with that girl. I'm sorry, Margaret, I said, not feeling sorry at all. But I think it's best if they explain the situation to you themselves. I'm sure they can tell you all about how they conspired to steal my inheritance. But the money, she started. What about it? They already spent quite a bit, she said, her voice tight with worry. The new house, the cars, the engagement party next week. Emma, surely we can work something out. I thought about the engagement party they planned at the country club, the same club where Michael and I had gotten married 6 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. You know what's interesting, Margaret? When Michael and I were married, you told me family was everything. That loyalty and honesty were the foundations of a lasting relationship. I paused, letting the words sink in. I wonder what you'll say when you find out how your son and my sister betrayed those values. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? She finally asked. Ask them about the photos they doctored. Ask about the false testimony, the manufactured evidence they used to paint me as unstable. Better yet, ask them about the affair they were having while Michael and I were still married. I heard her sharp intake of breath. No, she whispered. They wouldn't. They did, I said simply. And now they're about to learn that actions have consequences. After hanging up, I drove to grandmother's house. My house now, though Sarah didn't know that yet. The Grand Victorian stood silent and dignified, its windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. I used my key to enter, breathing in the familiar scent of old books and furniture polish. In the study, everything was exactly as grandmother had left it. Her reading glasses still sat on the desk, next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. I ran my fingers along the spines of her beloved books, remembering all the hours we'd spent here together. I miss you, I whispered to the empty room. I wish you could see this. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mr. Chen. Quarterly statements sent. Expect contact within 24 hours. I smiled, settling into grandmother's favorite armchair. The wait wouldn't be long now. Just then, I heard a car screech to a halt outside. Footsteps pounded up the front steps, followed by the sound of someone pounding on the door. Emma, Sarah's voice, shrill with panic. Open this door right now. We need to talk. I stayed where I was, listening as Michael's voice joined hers. The accounts are empty, he was saying. Everything's gone. How could this happen? Nothing's gone. I called through the door, loud enough for them to hear. It was never there to begin with. The pounding stopped. A moment of silence, then Sarah's voice again, quieter now. What are you talking about? Maybe you should ask your fiancé about due diligence, I replied. About checking the real value of what you thought you were stealing before spending money you didn't have. Another silence, followed by the sound of hurried whispers. I could imagine them out there, their perfect world crumbling around them. Emma, please, Michael's voice now, using that gentle tone he'd always used when trying to manipulate me. Let's discuss this like adults. I'm sure we can work something out. I stood up, walking to the front door, but not opening it. Like we discussed things when you were sleeping with my sister. Or like we discussed things when you lied in court about my mental health. That was a mistake, he stammered. We never meant. To get caught? I finished for him. To face consequences? Well, too bad, because that's exactly what's about to happen. The fallout was swift and devastating. Within hours of their discovery that the accounts were empty, Sarah and Michael's carefully constructed world began to unravel. I sat in grandmother's study, watching through the window as they argued on the front lawn. Sarah was gesturing wildly, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, while Michael paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair in frustration. My phone lit up with a message from Mr. Chen. The bank is requesting an immediate meeting regarding the recent expenditures. Shall I arrange it? Yes, I replied, and make sure all relevant parties are present. The next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of First National Bank, dressed in one of grandmother's vintage Channel suits. Sarah and Michael were already there, along with their lawyer and Margaret. They all looked up when I entered, their faces a mix of anger, fear, and desperation. Now that everyone's here, the bank manager began. We need to discuss the irregular activities on these accounts. Sarah's lawyer leaned forward. My clients were granted access to these accounts through a court order. Everything was legal. The court order, I interrupted, placing grandmother's journal on the table, was obtained through fraudulent evidence that we can now prove was manipulated. The next hour was excruciating for them. Mr. Chen methodically laid out every detail, the doctored photos, the false testimonies, the carefully orchestrated character assassination they'd used to gain control of what they thought was grandmother's fortune. The real estate alone, Mr. Chen concluded, the properties they've leveraged for loans. None of it was actually in the accounts they accessed. Those assets are held in a separate trust, one that requires both sisters' consent for any transactions. Michael's face had turned an interesting shade of gray, but the money we spent was essentially credit extended by the bank based on assets you didn't actually control, the bank manager finished, which means those loans are now in default. Sarah's perfectly manicured nails dug into the conference table. This is ridiculous. Emma's just trying to hurt us because she's jealous. Michael chose me, and she can't handle it. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and expensive jewelry, I saw what grandmother must have seen. A desperate woman so focused on taking what others have that she never built anything of her own. No, Sarah, I said quietly. This isn't about jealousy. It's about justice. About consequences. Grandmother knew what you were capable of, both of you. She planned for this. What do you mean? Margaret asked, speaking for the first time. I opened the journal to a marked page. This is grandmother's real will, her real intentions. Everything of value was placed in a trust before she died, with specific conditions. I looked directly at Sarah. She knew you'd try to take it all. She wanted to see what you'd do, how far you'd go. And now what? Michael demanded. You're going to take everything. Leave us with nothing. No, I replied. I'm going to do what grandmother would have wanted. The trust will remain intact, but with new conditions. I pulled out a document Mr. Chen had prepared. If you both sign this confession admitting to your fraud and manipulation, the trust will help pay off the debts you've incurred. Sarah's lawyer started to object, but she cut him off. And if we don't sign, then the bank proceeds with fraud charges and all the evidence of your deception goes public. Your choice. The silence in the room was deafening. Margaret was the first to speak. Sign it, she said to Michael, her voice tight with disappointment. Sign it and be grateful your grandmother's granddaughter has more mercy than either of you deserve. One by one, they signed. Sarah's hand shook so badly she could barely write her name. Michael wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. When it was done, Mr. Chen collected the documents and nodded to me. There's one more thing, I said, standing. The engagement ring. Sarah's hand instinctively covered the diamond. But it belonged to grandmother. It was never yours to take. Slowly, reluctantly, she slipped it off and placed it on the table. I picked it up, feeling its familiar weight. Grandmother told me once that this ring wasn't just about value, I said, turning it in my hand. It was about legacy, about the kind of person you choose to be. She wore it for 50 years, building a life based on integrity and wisdom. You both could have learned from her example. Instead, you chose greed. I left them there. In that conference room, their worlds forever changed. The ride home was quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the city. When I reached grandmother's house, my house now, I went straight to her study. Sitting in her favorite chair, I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, just as she'd said it would. On her desk, next to the unfinished crossword puzzle, I found an envelope I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a short note in her familiar handwriting. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then everything has played out as I expected. Remember that true wealth isn't in what you own, but in who you choose to be. You've proven yourself worthy of not just my inheritance, but of my legacy. The ring is yours now. Wear it with pride, knowing that you faced adversity with grace and emerged stronger. And perhaps someday, when the time is right, you'll pass these lessons on to someone who needs them as much as you once did. With all my love, Grandmother Rose. I sat there until the sun set, thinking about choices and consequences, about the price of greed and the value of integrity. Sarah and Michael would recover eventually. The trust would ensure they didn't end up destitute, but they would never again have the power to hurt me. Months later, I heard they'd moved to another state. Their engagement quietly ended. Margaret sent me a Christmas card, thanking me for handling things with more grace than they deserved. Sarah never reached out again, and that was fine. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ashes. The house became my sanctuary, filled with grandmother's books and memories. I started a foundation in her name, providing education grants to young women pursuing their dreams against the odds. Every time I sign a check for a new scholarship, I think about her wisdom, her foresight, her understanding of human nature. And the ring? I wear it every day, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in taking what others have, but in becoming someone they can never diminish. Grandmother knew that all along. She just waited patiently for me to learn it too. The keys felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked the door to my childhood home for what my sister claimed would be the last time. Emily's smug laughter still rang in my ears as she'd waved those documents in my face just hours ago, her perfectly manicured nails gripping the papers that supposedly gave her everything. My name is Alexandra Chen, and at 32, I never expected to be facing homelessness, especially not at the hands of my own sister. But here I was, standing in our father's study, surrounded by the memories of a man who taught me everything I knew about business. Everything except, apparently, how to protect myself from my own family. You have until Friday to get out, Emily had said, her voice dripping with the same condescension she perfected since we were children. I'm selling the house, and everything in it belongs to me now. Isn't it funny how things work out? Funny wasn't the word I would have chosen. 3 weeks after our father's funeral, Emily had somehow produced a will that left everything, the house, the business, the investments, all to her. The timing was suspicious, but the documents looked legitimate, and my sister had always been clever when it came to getting what she wanted. I ran my fingers along Dad's mahogany desk, remembering all the nights I'd spent here as a teenager, watching him work, learning about the family business. While Emily had been out partying through college, I'd been here, soaking up every lesson Dad had to teach. The import-export company he'd built from nothing had been his pride and joy, and I'd spent the last 10 years helping him grow it even further. You're just like me, Alex, he often say, his eyes crinkling with pride. You understand that success isn't about quick wins, it's about playing the long game. The long game. I smiled slightly as I remembered those words, even as I heard Emily's heels clicking down the hallway toward the study. Still here? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. I thought I told you to start packing. The new owners want to do a walkthrough next week. I turned to face her, taking in the designer outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Emily had always been about appearances, about showing the world how successful she was. But Dad had taught me that true success wasn't about what you could show, it was about what you knew. Just gathering some personal items, I said calmly, picking up a framed photo from Dad's desk. It was from my college graduation. Me in my cap and gown, Dad beaming beside me. Emily hadn't attended the ceremony, claiming she had a spa appointment she couldn't reschedule. Personal items? Emily scoffed. Did you miss the part where everything belongs to me now? That includes the photos, the furniture, even Dad's precious collection of business journals. Though why you want those boring old things is beyond me. I carefully set the photo back down, noting how Emily's eyes narrowed at my composure. She'd expected tears, begging, maybe even a fight. My calmness was clearly throwing her off balance. You know what's interesting, Emily? I said, moving toward the bookshelf where Dad kept his most important documents. Dad always said that the most valuable things in life aren't always the most obvious. She rolled her eyes, checking her reflection in her compact mirror. Spare me the fortune cookie wisdom, Alex. You're broke, I'm rich, and soon you'll be out on the street. That's all there is to it. But that wasn't all there was to it. Not even close. As I ran my fingers along the spine of Dad's oldest business journal, I thought about the real inheritance he'd left me, the one Emily knew nothing about. The lessons, the connections, the secret accounts in Hong Kong that only I knew how to access. Dad had always been 10 steps ahead, and he taught me to do the same. You're right, I said, turning back to her. I should start packing. Emily's triumphant smile faltered slightly at my easy agreement. She'd been hoping for resistance, for drama she could use to paint me as the unstable sister who couldn't handle losing everything. That's right, she said, recovering quickly. And don't think about taking anything valuable. I've already cataloged everything worth selling. I nodded, gathering a few personal items into a small box. Of course. Though I have to ask, what are you planning to do with the business? Dad's company isn't exactly something you can run without experience. Emily waved her hand dismissively. Oh, I'm selling that too. Some corporate conglomerate made an offer. They'll probably strip it for parts, but who cares? The payout will be amazing. My heart clenched at her casual dismissal of Dad's life's work, but I kept my expression neutral. I see. Well, good luck with that. As I walked past her out of the study, box in hand, I could feel her watching me, probably trying to figure out why I wasn't more upset. She'd expected me to break down, to beg her to reconsider, to fight her for what was rightfully mine. But Dad had taught me better than that. He'd shown me that sometimes when people think they've won, that's when they're most vulnerable. And Emily, in her rush to claim everything for herself, had missed the most important inheritance of all. I made my way to my old bedroom, setting the box down on my childhood bed. The room looked exactly as it had when I'd left for college. Walls lined with academic awards and business competition trophies, while Emily's room down the hall was still plastered with boy band posters and fashion magazine cutouts. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, Dad's longtime friend and business partner. Everything in place. Ready when you are. I smiled, thinking about the look that would cross Emily's face when she realized what was really going on. Dad had always said that in business, like in chess, you had to think several moves ahead. And while Emily had been focused on the obvious prizes, the house, the cars, the visible trappings of wealth, she completely missed the real game being played. The sound of Emily's voice drifted up from downstairs. She was already on the phone with a real estate agent, discussing listing prices and potential buyers. Let her plan, I thought. Let her think she's won. Because in 3 days, when she tried to sell Dad's company, she'd discover that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't listed in any will. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight in the lessons learned over countless nights in a study, in the relationships built over years of hard work, and in the careful planning of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I picked up my box and walked downstairs, past Emily, who was still chattering about property values, and out to my car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of her in my rearview mirror, standing in the doorway with that satisfied smirk still on her face. Enjoy your victory, Em, I muttered, turning onto the main road. While it lasts. 3 days passed like a slow-motion countdown. I'd moved into a small apartment downtown, the kind of place Emily would consider beneath her. But location didn't matter. What mattered was that it was directly across from Dad's company headquarters, giving me a perfect view of what was about to unfold. That morning, I watched from my window as Emily's red Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. She stepped out in her designer suit, probably dressed to impress the corporate buyers she thought would be stripping apart Dad's legacy. I couldn't help but smile as I noticed Marcus's car already parked in his usual spot. My phone buzzed. A message from Linda in accounting. She's here. Conference room B. Everything's ready. I took a deep breath, straightening my own blazer as I gathered my files. Dad's voice echoed in my memory. The best business deals aren't made in boardrooms, Alex. They're made in the quiet moments, in the relationships you build when nobody's watching. For 10 years, I'd been building those relationships. While Emily had been posting Instagram photos from exotic vacations, I'd been learning every aspect of the business. I knew every employee by name, understood every contract, and most importantly, I had earned their trust. The elevator dinged as I reached the executive floor. Through the glass walls, I could see Emily sitting in the conference room, tapping her perfectly manicured nails impatiently on the table. She was alone, no sign of the corporate buyers she'd been bragging about. "Miss Chen," Marcus greeted me with a knowing smile as I approached. "Ready?" I nodded, clutching the folder that contained everything we'd been preparing for. "Let's do this." Emily's head snapped up as we entered the conference room, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. "What are you doing here? This is a private meeting." "Is it?" I asked, taking a seat across from her. Funny, because as the majority shareholder of Chen Imports, I'd say I have every right to be here. The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Dole gave me everything, including the company." Marcus cleared his throat, sliding a document across the table. "Actually, Ms. Chen, your father's will gave you his personal assets, the house, cars, and liquid investments. But the company?" He paused, allowing himself a small smile. "That's a different matter entirely." Emily snatched the paper, her hands shaking slightly as she read. I could pinpoint the exact moment reality hit her. Her perfectly composed facade cracked, replaced by dawning horror. This can't be right," she stammered. "Dad transferred 60% of the company's shares to Alex?" "When?" "2 years ago," I said calmly. "Right after you told him his business was boring and you'd rather focus on your social media influencer career. Remember that family dinner?" She did remember. I could see it in her eyes. The night she laughed at Dad's offer to learn the business, declaring that she was meant for bigger things than import-export work. But the buyers," she sputtered. "They're coming today to make an offer." "No, they're not," Marcus interjected, "because the company isn't for sale. In fact, under Alex's leadership, we just secured 3 major new contracts that will double our revenue within the year." Emily's face flushed red with anger. "This isn't fair. I'm his daughter too. I deserve." "What exactly do you deserve, Emily?" I cut in, my voice sharp. "You've never worked a day in this company. You don't know our employees, our clients, or our operations. The only thing you've ever cared about is what you could get out of it." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You planned this, didn't you? You and Dad, you were always so close, always excluding me." "No, Emily," I said, standing as well. "You excluded yourself. Every time you dismissed his work as beneath you, every time you chose a party over a family dinner, every time you made it clear that his legacy meant nothing to you. Those were your choices." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from genuine emotion or frustration at losing control. "So what now? You're just going to take everything?" I shook my head. "No, you can keep the house and everything else from the will. But the company? That stays with someone who actually cares about it, and the people who depend on it for their livelihoods." Marcus stood, gathering his papers. "I believe we're done here. Ms. Chen, your office needs to be cleared out by the end of the week." Emily stared at me, a mix of rage and disbelief on her face. "You think you've won, don't you? That you're so clever, just like Dad always said." "This isn't about winning, Emily," I replied, gathering my things. "It's about protecting what matters. Something Dad tried to teach both of us, if you'd ever bothered to listen." As she stormed out of the conference room, her heels echoing down the hallway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Through the windows, I could see employees trying to hide their smiles. They'd all known this was coming, had all been part of keeping the secret until the right moment. Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your father would be proud, Alex. He always said you were the one who understood what really mattered." I nodded, looking around at the office that had been my second home for so many years. "He taught me that success isn't about what you own. It's about what you build, what you protect, and who you become in the process." A month after the conference room showdown, I sat in Dad's old office, my office now, reviewing quarterly reports. The view of the city skyline was the same, but everything else had changed. Emily had made good on her threat to sell the house, though the buyers backed out when they discovered the extensive repairs needed. She'd been too busy posting on social media to maintain the property properly. My intercom buzzed. "Ms. Chen," my assistant Sarah's voice came through. "Your sister is here. She's insisting on seeing you." I took a deep breath, straightening the papers on my desk. "Send her in." Emily looked different from the last time I'd seen her. The designer outfit was gone, replaced by something more subdued. Her perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, but the biggest change was in her eyes. The smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "Alex," she said, hovering in the doorway. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course." She sat down, fidgeting with her purse strap. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. "I sold the house," she finally said. "I heard." "The money, it's almost gone." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Turns out maintaining a luxury lifestyle is expensive when you don't actually have a source of income." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "What do you want, Emily?" "I've been thinking," she said, her voice quieter than I had ever heard it. "About Dad, about everything he tried to teach us. I didn't understand it then, but I think I'm starting to now." "What's there to understand?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "You got exactly what you wanted. The money, the assets." She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "No, I got what I thought I wanted, but sitting in that empty house, going through Dad's things, I found his journals." My heart skipped a beat. Dad's business journals had been his most prized possession, filled with not just business strategies but personal reflections, lessons he'd hoped to pass on to both his daughters. "Did you read them?" I asked. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. "Every single one. The way he wrote about you, about how proud he was of your dedication, your understanding of what really matters. But you know what hit me the hardest? The entries about me." She pulled a worn leather journal from her purse, opening it to a marked page. He wrote, "Emily has so much potential, if only she could see beyond the surface. Money can be earned and lost, but knowledge, wisdom, relationships, these are the true measures of wealth." I remembered that entry. Dad had written it the night Emily had refused to attend a crucial client dinner, choosing instead to go to a celebrity party. "He never gave up hope that you'd understand," I said softly. "But I didn't," Emily replied, her voice breaking. "Not until it was too late, and now I have nothing. No real skills, no purpose, just a dwindling bank account and a lot of regrets." I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the city. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the buildings Dad had pointed out to me countless times, telling me stories about the deals made and lessons learned in each one. "You're wrong," I said finally, turning back to face her. "You don't have nothing. You have the most valuable thing Dad tried to give us, the opportunity to learn, to grow, to understand what really matters." Emily looked up, hope flickering across her face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," I continued, returning to my desk, "that if you're serious about understanding Dad's legacy, about learning what he tried to teach us, there's a place for you here." Her eyes widened. "You'd give me a job. After everything I did." "Not give," I corrected her. "Offer. You'll start at the bottom, just like I did. You'll learn every aspect of the business, work your way up. No special treatment, no shortcuts." "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I pulled out one of Dad's old journals, opening it to the last entry he'd written before his death. "Because Dad believed in second chances," he wrote here. "Business is about profit, but family is about growth. Sometimes the greatest returns come from investing in people when they're ready to change." Emily stood up, her hands trembling slightly. "I won't let you down this time. Either of you." "I know," I said, standing as well. "Because this time you understand what you're working for." As we walked out of the office together, I caught our reflection in the glass walls. Two sisters, finally on the same page, ready to build something meaningful together. Dad had always said that the true measure of success wasn't in what you accumulated, but in what you built and who you helped along the way. That evening, as I locked up the office, I paused at Dad's old photo on the wall. "You were right," I whispered. "The long game isn't just about business strategy. Sometimes it's about giving people the time they need to understand what really matters." Emily was waiting by the elevator, holding Dad's journal close to her chest. As we rode down together, I realized that maybe this was the inheritance Dad had wanted all along. Not just the company's success, but the chance for both his daughters to understand the true value of his legacy. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't about winning or losing, but about finding the wisdom to know what's truly worth fighting for. And as Emily and I stepped out into the evening air, ready to begin this new chapter together, I knew that Dad would be proud of both of us, not for what we owned, but for what we were finally ready to build.